The appropriations passed from the State House on Wednesday was a record high for the Mental Health Department. It gave the department nearly all of the funds they had requested, but reorganized the central office, taking away a lot of administrative power from Dr. James and leaving the director with no salary increase. Representative Ben Brown says the vote should not be construed as a vote of confidence in Dr. James.
In fact, everyone who spoke did attribute mistakes, mismanagement, lack of administrative ability, some lack of integrity to our present commissioner. To me, it's very clear that we're going to continue to have problems so long as Frank James remains in that position.
I'm not interested in a battle. You know, I'm interested in working with people and interested in making sure that people will get served. And I'll be glad to respond to, you know, whatever Representative Brown is interested in getting accomplished. I'd be certainly welcome to work with him.
Forecasters say James will be gone within the year. Dr. James admits that may be true, but says he won't resign until he's sure he's leaving behind one of the best mental health departments in the country. Charles Schnitzer, Action 4 at the Mental Health Department. A passenger plane crashed at Will Rogers World Airport this morning and burst into flames.
Keep the roads clear, we'll be bringing in carrier.
14 people were aboard. Authorities have not released a number of fatalities. Luckily, it was all practice, an exercise designed to give firefighters the experience that will be critical if a large air tragedy ever occurs in Oklahoma City.
We have to train constantly to keep ourselves proficient and keep the people flying in and out of Will Rogers safe.
The airport fire units conduct these drills every 3 months, but this is the first time they have operated with victims. They work under conditions as near reality as possible. 2,000 gallons of fuel were burned and temperatures reached nearly 2,000 degrees. The instructors were pleased. 30 seconds after the units arrived, the fire was knocked down enough to reach the victims, and in 13 minutes, the first victims had left the scene. Charles Schnitzer, Action 4 at Will Rogers World Airport.
We had 36 55-gallon drums of this on this transport, and one of those had broke open and it seeped out. And we had to find out which drum it was. And now we have to, where the truck was sitting and where the liquid was spilled, we have to absorb that with sand and then use some caustic soda on it to neutralize the area.
The Oklahoma City School Board voted last night to lift the moratorium on school closings, meaning they can now shut down any school in the system. 14 months ago, the board talked about shutting down some schools, noting low enrollment, high cost, and general inefficiency. But they voted at that time not to close any schools for 4 years. Last night, they changed their mind.
Congress makes laws, which they change. The Oklahoma legislature makes laws, which they change, which are not necessarily feasible at all times. So I want to clarify that I do not view the making or breaking of policy as promises, neither to patrons or to children.
But some school patrons argue that the board's action is a power play, a way to get back at the district for having defeated the school bond issue. Board members say they simply want to run the system as economically efficient as possible. Their action last night merely enables them to close schools. It does not in any way designate which schools may close or mandate that they must close any schools. Debbie Mash, Action 4.
And that actions of this kind do nothing but drive away people that are in the community and ought to be serving on such boards and commissions and council people, because they won't take the crap that you have to put up with here. So I say to you that I do not intend to sit still when I see an article of this type. I cannot respond in the same media, but there's another media that I can respond to and in front of, and I'm going to do it. That's it.
That's it.
This is Lawrence Burton. He's developed what he says is a cure for cancer. It's called immuno-augmented therapy, or IAT. Oklahoma is the first state to authorize IAT, and some of Burton's patients say it's about time. But many members of the medical profession aren't too sure about Burton.
Do you think it's a good idea to have him coming to Oklahoma?
Personally, no.
Ishmael would prefer that patients stick with more traditional treatment, like surgery, which removes the cancer, and chemotherapy, like that being received by this patient at Presbyterian Hospital. She's receiving drugs to control the growth of cancer cells. This patient is receiving radiation therapy. Radiation can destroy living cells, both normal and cancerous. It's hoped that after protracted use, the normal cells will recover, but the cancerous cells will not. Dr. Ishmael is worried that IAT therapy won't be monitored properly, and he sees another problem.
I feel that this could deter some patients from receiving standard known best therapy.
The State Board of Health will meet in this conference room tomorrow. They'll announce exactly what conditions Burton must meet before he can begin operation in Oklahoma. No one from the Department of Health would appear on camera today. But Action 4 has learned that Dr. Joan Lovett, the Commissioner of Health, still hasn't received answers to all her inquiries. For example, Burton still hasn't told her exactly what it is he injects in his patients. Bill Ross, Action 4, at the State Health Department.
After a good rain, you can usually find a farmer driving down a muddy dirt road checking his crops. That's what John Titanic from Luther is doing. He received about 1.5 inches of rain on his farm. The full-time farmer since 1969 says the much-needed moisture put the fire out on his wheat. He adds, though, he expects a less-than-average crop this year.
We've been needing the moisture. 3 weeks ago would have been a lot better than now, but it beats nothing the way we got the rain here the other night. We had some awful warm weather in March, that I don't think was too good on the wheat, and then it turned cool in April, and probably if we hadn't had some cool, cloudy days in the last 2-3 weeks, why, we could have been in worse shape than what we are now.
4 inches of rain spread out in May, along with some cool weather. That's what Titanic feels would be ideal for his farming operation.
Oklahoma farmers aren't all that optimistic about this year's crop. They say the conditions just haven't been right. Titanic says this is his best field of wheat, yet he still isn't that pleased with it. Ben McCain, Action 4, near Luther.
DeBar Hall was named after Edwin DeBar. DeBar was a chemistry professor who started the school's pharmacy department. The building was given his name in recognition of his contributions to OU, but DeBar was also active in the Ku Klux Klan, as it turns out. He was a Grand Dragon, a Klan leader in 1922. Because of that, a student congressman introduced a bill calling for a change in the building's name. He says he doesn't think the university should honor a Klan member.
This institution is paid for by tax dollars, and it's paid for by money that has come from black families, from white families, from Mexican families, etc. And the argument that people have is they don't want their tax dollars going to a building that is named after the Grand Dragon of the Ku Klux Klan.
Stanhope's bill was defeated in Student Congress. University officials say they won't comment on the controversy because the issue hasn't reached them officially. But another student Congress member says the issue is not just going away.
Even though he was very active in starting different departments on campus, and he brought a great deal of money to the university and helped build up our chemistry programs and what have you, I think his very active involvement in the Klan far overshadows any good that he did for the university.
It's not just the OU campus. The city of Norman is involved too. You see, this street in Norman is also named after Edwin DeBar. What's in a name, after all? Well, Anita Bryant says she and other black students on the OU campus feel that there is something in this name, something to be ashamed of. And she says they're going to fight until they get the name of the street and the building changed. Ted Brown, Action 4 in Norman.
A gray dawn has barely broken over Lawton as the B-25 crew heads out to the iron-laden Maiden for their mission. The big bird must be handled gingerly. With the oil loosening ritual complete, Colonel Ray Cunningham climbs into the cockpit where he'll lead his crew through today's exercise. Cunningham feeds his family by crop dusting. But every chance he gets, he takes up his favorite toy, a faithfully restored B-25 World War II bomber. The plane which made history before the 36-year-old Cunningham was born.
B-25 was used in all the theaters of World War II, and that aircraft was found up in Ohio. We ferried it back in 1979 and virtually restored it from top to bottom. Everything's either repaired, replaced, or rebuilt.
Today's chore is to practice simulated low-level bombing, the kind of bombing which made the 25 popular in the Pacific.
It's probably as close to flying combat as you can get without actually being in combat flying. We get a big kick out of some of the guys that flew these in World War II. They'll come up and look at the airplane and tell us about some of the past experiences they had.
Cunningham and his laden maiden crew have allowed another generation of Americans to also experience the excitement of one of the world's most colorful bombers. Mission accomplished. Back on terra firma, the crew checks on the bomb drop with their explosives expert. They want to make sure everything's thumbs up for future air shows.
It looked perfect where I was.
Lots of smoke.
Better. Lots of smoke, lots of fire.
Lots of concussion.
The maiden has never let Cunningham down. It just goes to show you, behind every good man stands a good woman, aluminum or otherwise. Scott Wallace, Action 4 in Lawton.
Oklahoma County commissioners and material suppliers are still keeping the U.S. Attorney's Office busy. Prosecutors expect more trials and convictions through the year. The tally looks like this. 190 people have been found or pleaded guilty to this day, while one commissioner has been acquitted. Government attorneys say the one acquittal does not disappoint them as much as state lawmakers do by not passing laws to help stop county corruption.
Our honest commissioner that was cooperating with us, Rufus Young, was receiving kickbacks after our first indictments. In eastern Oklahoma, that was still occurring. So that leads us to believe that when this dies down, if there isn't some meaningful checks and balances implemented by the legislature, this will reoccur.
Governor George Nye has been promising county government reform since the scandal was made public. In fact, he set up a task force to study the problem, but many of the proposed changes have not been implemented. State representatives and state senators argue among themselves about county government reform. However, not enough legislators are agreeing with each other to pass many reform bills. Federal officials hope this election year will force lawmakers to take some action, because the U.S. government can certainly use the help. Ed Stewart, Action 4.
The tag agencies in question are in Tulsa. There are 5 of them, owned by 4 different people. And according to the state auditor, all 4 of the tag agents are related in one way or the other to the wife of State Senator Finis Smith. They also do business with Doris Smith, business totaling tens of thousands of dollars, which comes out of the agent's expenses, which means that much less money goes toward public schools. Among other things, state auditor and gubernatorial candidate Tom Daxon says the tag agents are paying too much for services provided by the companies Mrs. Smith has an interest in, but that may not be illegal.
The laws that deal with these areas are all very complicated, and we have forwarded these reports to prosecuting authorities for their review. There certainly are some areas here which we would question, but I'm not in a position to say flatly that state law has been violated.
Tag agents are licensed by the Tax Commission, and officials there this afternoon said although they haven't had a chance to study the report in detail, they see no serious violation of their standards and question Auditor Daxon's motives surrounding the release of the report.
I don't know what his motive is, whether he's trying to disrupt the tag delivery system in the state of Oklahoma, whether he wants to do it all by mail, or if he really feels that perhaps there are some bad ones in the system. You've had his report a lot longer than we have here at the Tax Commission.
Officials here at the Tax Commission say that the state auditor is responsible for keeping a running audit on the Commission's business. They say Mr. Daxon has had these figures in his possession for several years, and their question to him is why is he just now releasing them? Ted Brown, Action 4 at the State Tax Commission. Here's something you haven't seen in the local liquor store lately. Among the stacks of boxes, Crown Royal, one of the most popular products distributed by Seagram's & Sons. You haven't seen it lately because Seagram's was the first distiller to pull out of the state because of the Oklahoma connection. A district court ruling allowed Oklahoma liquor wholesalers to sell to out-of-state retailers at a lower price than the distillers themselves. The state Supreme Court overturned that ruling, so the bottles are going back on the shelves. And Oklahoma Alcohol Beverage Control Board Director Robert Lester hopes that is the end of it.
It's my personal opinion that the people of Oklahoma didn't understand the so-called Oklahoma connection. I think the state was embarrassed by it to some degree because they didn't understand exactly why it all came about. And certainly my hope and intention that as far as possible it will not happen again.
Most of the other major brands returned to the shelves last month. Seagram's is the last to come back. Now that they're here again, that should be an end to the story of the Oklahoma connection. Ted Brown, Action 4, Northwest Oklahoma City.
Tinker Air Force Base is one of the largest military aircraft refurbishing bases in the world. Because the base is in constant use, many of its systems need upgrading. The House Armed Services Committee is seeing to that by appropriating almost $11 million to Tinker. The money will purchase more items like these sophisticated firefighting turrets used to douse hangar fires. There will also be other expenditures.
Okay. The heating system in this building was installed in 1942 when the building was constructed. It's a natural gas system which is inefficient. We cannot get the parts to repair the system, so we're going to replace it with a steam system that will be more efficient and conserve energy at the same time.
In addition to Tinker, 2 other air bases in the state will receive money for improvements. Vance Air Base at Enid will see almost $9.5 million for more housing, while Altus Air Base will have almost $3 million with which to build new housing facilities and remodel its data processing center. Of course, all of this is subject to more congressional scrutiny, but at least one Tinker official believes they will get the funds because that facility is such an important link in the national defense chain. Tony Stizza, Action 4 at Tinker.
"51-year-old Juanita Cabral was shopping at the Humpty Dumpty food store in central Lawton last night when the building was shook by a sudden roar. Several windows blew out and part of the building's roof caved in. Mrs. Cabral and an injured store employee were rushed to Lawton hospitals. Cabral died a short time later. 27-year-old Helen Trivy was hospitalized in critical condition. Stormy skies had dumped 4 inches of rain on Lawton in just 1 hour last night. Apparently, the weight of that water was just too much for the roof. The storm wiped out a good part of the store, scattering merchandise everywhere. Humpty employees tried to salvage what they could of the supplies which hadn't spoiled. Construction experts will have to examine the roof to determine exactly why it collapsed and if the rest of the structure is safe. Humpty officials huddled together to decide the store's fate. One company spokesman told me he hopes to get the store back in business as soon as possible. Other parts of southern Oklahoma also suffered at the hands of Mother Nature. The torrent trampled farmers' fields from Sterling to Stratford. The worst damage seemed to be centered south of Lindsay. The effects of the storm weren't all bad. The rain-swollen creeks will empty into thirsty South Oklahoma lakes, providing much-needed moisture for the upcoming summer. And those with time to reflect might notice nature's contrast between a raging river and her dainty spring daisies. Scott Wallace, Action 4 near Lindsay.
Now, what do you people want? No school, or do you want a school?
That was the question posed at the PTA meeting tonight. More than 100 people showed up for it, and most were on the side supporting a new school in McKinley Park.
It is my idea, and many ideas of many people, that the security that the school board would have down there, and the maintenance that the school board would have down there, in addition to the park department security, this park will be improved. It won't be hurt.
The people who do not support a McKinley school worry about things like the traffic children would have to cross to get to it, and the school board's motives for closing the other two schools.
You're not in the education business at all. You're in the real estate business.
How about that?
You don't care one iota for the children. What you're interested in is what you can garner by selling and trading real estate.
Nothing was really decided at tonight's meeting, but it did accomplish something. The show of support for a new building was there for members of the school board to see and hear.
Come up to the school.
Ted Brown, Action 4 at Eugene Field School.
I've got a little 4-year-old daughter.
Its responsibilities, either to instruction or research. No priority. The pioneer in Oklahoma's petroleum industry and has been very generous. The time has come for us to get the rubber and the exhaust and the automobiles and the asphalt away from our buildings, to bring in fountains and grass and trees and benches and people and parks. And to do that will be a growing pain.
Today marks the beginning of the month-long Top Banana promotion. Sponsored by the Brom Ice Cream Stores, all proceeds from banana split sales will be donated to the American Lung Association. Today's kickoff included members of the media featured in a banana split building contest at Penn Square Mall. Well-known newscasters Linda Cavanaugh and Jerry Adams from KTVY put their best talents at work to create a real masterpiece. Their hope was, the better it looks, the more money it might raise. You see, each of the banana splits made by the media teams was auctioned off to the highest bidder.
2, 3, we're gonna get 3, we're gonna get 3. This is even tax deductible. 2, 3, 3, we're gonna get 3. So.
Linda and Jerry's work of art paid off. It went for the grand total of $45. That may sound expensive, but I'm sure if you'd ask this young man, he'd say it was worth every penny of it. Last year, almost $5,000 was raised from banana split sales. The money was used for pediatric research and family asthma programs by the Lung Association. This year, it's hoped the Top Banana campaign will successfully continue helping the fight against lung disease. Carol Lambert, Action 4.